So The Crying of Lot 49. Hard-boiled and hyper-literate at the same time, noir and full of color, a cult classic par excellence. I will say only this about the book. It is a book that, though rooted in the California culture of the early 60s, a few years before the underground movements depicted throughout would rise to the surface and burst in a rash of love-ins and riots, a few decades before the internet would make a secret postal service unnecessary, and though hung up on a very specific and maybe just a little dated satire of suburbia, LSD, and rock and roll, it is a book that is still relevant to our times. After all, the US Postal Service announced earlier this year that it would no longer be able to guarantee next-day delivery. The Tristero, it seems, is gradually winning. I'm going to take the first reading up until 4:10, after which time I'll pass it on to Megan Grable, who may or may not be here. I don't know. If she doesn't take it, well, then somebody else can. Oh yeah, the rules, real quick. I'm sure lots of you are familiar with them. Everyone signs up for a 10-minute, well, not everyone, but those who have signed up get 10-minute blocks starting on the 10 minutes, so 4 to 4:10, 4:10 to 4:20, and so forth. And there's a clock back there on the mantle, and if you could just watch your time, I'll probably be around to signal you, and just be ready to pass it off. Put your finger in the book and just pass it off. We have a master copy here. One summer afternoon, Mrs. Oedipa Maas came home from a Tupperware party whose hostess had put perhaps too much kirsch in the fondue to find that she, Oedipa, had been named executor, or she supposed executrix, of the estate of one Pierce Inverarity, a California real estate mogul who had once lost $2 million in his spare time, but still had assets numerous and tangled enough to make the job of sorting it all out more than honorary. Oedipa stood in the living room, stared at the greenish dead eye of the TV tube, spoke the name of God, tried to feel as drunk as possible, but this did not work. She thought of a hotel room in Mazatlan whose door had just been slammed, it seemed forever, waking up 200 birds down in the lobby. A sunrise over the library slope at Cornell University that nobody out on it had seen because the slope faces west. A dry, disconsolate tune from the fourth movement of Bartok Concerto for Orchestra. A whitewashed bust of Jay Gould that Pierce kept over the bed on a shelf so narrow for it, she'd always had the hovering fear it would someday topple on them. Was that how he died, she wondered, among dreams, crushed by the only icon in the house? That only made her laugh, out loud and helpless. You're so sick, Oedipa, she told herself, or the room, which she knew. The letter was from the law firm of Warp, Wistful, Kubitschek, and McMingus of Los Angeles, and signed by somebody named Metzger. It said Pierce had died back in the spring and that they'd only just now found the will. Metzger was to act as co-executor and special counsel in the event of any involved litigation. Oedipa had been named also to execute the will in a crocodile dated a year ago, or a codicil, dated a year ago. She tried to think back to whether anything unusual had happened around them. Through the rest of the afternoon, through a trip to the market in downtown Kinneret among the pines to buy ricotta and listen to the muzak, today she came through the bead-curtained entrance around Bar 4 of the Fort Wayne Settecento Ensemble's Variorium recording of the Vivaldi Kazoo Concerto, Boyd Beaver, soloist. Then through the sun gathering of her marjoram and sweet basil from the herb garden, reading of book reviews in the latest Scientific American, into the layering of a lasagna, garlicking of a bread, tearing up of romaine leaves, eventually, of and on, into the mixing of the Twilight's whiskey sours against the arrival of her husband, Wendell Mucho Maas, from work. She wondered, shuffling back through a fat deck full of days which seemed, when she'd be first to admit it, more or less identical, or all pointing the same way subtly like a conjurer's deck, any odd one readily clear to a trained eye. It took her till the middle of Huntley and Brinkley to remember that last year at 3 or so in the morning there had come this long-distance call, from where she would never know, unless now they'd left a diary, by a voice beginning in a heavy Slavic tones, as second secretary at the Transylvanian consulate, looking for an escaped bat. Modulated to comic Negro, then on into hostile Pachuco dialect, full of chingas and maricons. Then a Gestapo officer asking her in shrieks, did she have relatives in Germany? And finally, his Lamont Cranston voice, the one he'd talked in all the way down to Mazatlan. Pierce, she'd managed to get in. I thought we had, but Margot, earnestly, I've just come from Commissioner Weston, and that old man in the fun house was murdered by the same blowgun that killed Professor Quackenbush, or something. For God's sake, she said. Mucho had rolled over and was looking at her. Why don't you hang up on him, Mucho suggested sensibly. I heard that, Pierce said. I think it's time Wendell Maas had a little visit from the shadow. Silence, positive and thorough, fell. So it was the last of his voices she ever heard. Lamont Cranston. That phone line could have pointed any direction, been any length. Its quiet ambiguity shifted over in the months after the call to what had been received. Memories of his face, body, things he'd given her, things she had now and then pretended not to have heard him say. It took him over and to the verge of being forgotten. The shadow waited a year before visiting. But now there was Metzger's letter. Had Pierce called last year then to tell her about his codicil? Or had he decided on it later, somehow because of her annoyance and Mucho's indifference? She felt exposed, finessed, put down. She never executed a will in her life, didn't know where to begin, didn't know how to tell the law firm in LA that she didn't know where to begin. 3, 4.
Too fat to frog. That's what you tell me all the time. What you tell me when I'm too fat to frog. That's what you tell me all the time. What you tell me when you're really trying to put me down. But I'm hip, so close your big fat lip. Yeah, baby. Too fat to frog. At least I ain't too slim to swim. At least I ain't too slim to swim.
It's lovely, said Oedipa. It's lovely, said Oedipa, but why do you sing with an English accent when you don't talk that way? It's this group I'm in, Miles explained, the Paranoids. We're new yet. Our manager says we should sing like that. We watch English movies a lot for the accent. My husband's a disc jockey, Oedipa said, trying to be helpful. It's only a 1,000-watt station, but if you had anything like a tape I could give him to plug. Miles closed the door behind them and started in with a shifty eye. In return for what? Moving in on her. Do you want what I think you want? This is the Paola kid here, you know. Oedipa picked up the nearest weapon, which happened to be the rabbit ear antenna off of the TV in the corner. Oh, said Miles, stopping. You hate me too. His eyes bright through his bangs. You are paranoid, Oedipa said. I have a smooth young body, said Miles. I thought you older chicks went for that. He left after shaking her down for 4 bits for carrying the bags. That night, the lawyer Metzger showed up. He turned out to be so good-looking that Oedipa thought at first they, somebody up there, were putting her on. He had to be an actor. He stood at her door behind him, the oblong pool shimmering silent in a mild diffusion of light from the nighttime sky, saying, Mrs. Maas, like a reproach. His enormous eyes, lambent, extravagantly lashed, smiled at her wickedly. She looked around for him for reflectors, microphones, camera cabling, but there was only himself and a debonair bottle of French Beaujolais, which he claimed to have smuggled last year into California, this rollicking lawbreaker past the frontier guards. So hey, he murmured, after scouring motels all day to find you, I can come in there, can I? Oedipa had planned on nothing more involved that evening than watching Bonanza on the tube. She'd shifted into stretched denim slacks and a shaggy black sweater, had her hair all the way down. She knew she looked pretty good. Come in, she said, but I only have 1 glass. I, the gallant Metzger let her know, can drink out of the bottle. He came in and sat on the floor in his suit, opened the bottle, poured her a drink, began to talk. It presently came out that Oedipa hadn't been so far off thinking he was an actor. Some 20-odd years ago, Metzger had been one of those child movie stars performing under the name Baby Igor. My mother, he announced bitterly, was really out to casher me, boy. Like a piece of beef on this sink, she wanted me drained in white. Times I wonder, smoothing down the hair at the back of his head, if she succeeded. It scares me. You know what mothers are like, that turn their male children into. You certainly don't look, Oedipa began, and then had second thoughts. Metzger flashed her a big wry couple rows of teeth. Looks don't mean a thing anymore, he said. I live inside my looks, and I'm never sure. The possibility haunts me. And how often, Oedipa inquired, now aware now are where it was all words. Has that line of approach worked for you, baby Igor? Do you know, Metzger said, Inverarity only mentioned you to me once. Were you close? No, I drew up his well. Don't you want to know what he said? No, said Oedipa, and snapped on the television set. Onto the screen bloomed the image of a child of indeterminate sex, its bare legs pressed awkward together, its shoulder-length curls mingling with the shorter hair of the St. Bernard, whose long tongue, as Oedipa watched, began to swipe at the child's rosy cheeks, making the child wrinkle up its nose appealingly and say, "Aw, Murray, come on now, you're getting me all wet." That's me, cried Metzger, staring. Good God, which one, said Oedipa. That movie was called, Metzger snapped his fingers, Cashiered. About you and your mother. About this kid and his father, who's drummed out of the British Army for cowardice, only he's covering up for a friend, see, and to redeem himself. He and the kid follow the old regiment to Gallipoli, where the father somehow builds a midget submarine, and every week they slip through the Dardanelles into the Sea of Marmara and torpedo the Turkish merchantmen, and the father, son, and St. Bernard. The dog sits on a periscope watch and barks if he sees anything. Oedipa was pouring wine. You're kidding. Listen, here's where I sing. And sure enough, the child and dog, and a merry old Greek fisherman who had appeared from nowhere with a zither, now all stood in front of the phony case process footage of a seashore at sunset, and the kid sang Baby Igor's song.